I want you to try something for a second. Um, Imagine you're standing in a quiet, softly lit room, and you're staring at a painting on a wall.
It's a normal canvas, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's completely flat, just canvas and paint. Like there are no screens, no hidden projectors, literally no electricity involved at all.
Right.
But as you keep looking at it, something impossible starts to happen. The colors actually begin to physically pulse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they vibrate. Some shapes seem to, push out toward you while others pull back into the wall. The whole surface is just shifting and breathing right before your eyes.
Which sounds completely
It
wild.
really does. It feels like magic, but it's actually this century-old optical hack.
And, the artists who engineered that hack, they fundamentally altered the trajectory of visual media.
Absolutely. So for today's deep dive, we are talking about Sonia and Robert Delaunay.
Right. Who are the focus of this really deeply insightful essay by the art critic Özkan Arulu?
Yeah. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore how this duo completely revolutionized modern art. And I mean, they didn't do it by painting prettier landscapes or
Yeah.
like capturing better likenesses of people,
No, not at all. They did it by literally hijacking the biological mechanics of human perception.
which is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
But I mean, to really grasp the magnitude of what the Delaunays pulled off, we have to look at the massive crisis of purpose that art was going through in the early 20th century.
Yeah, you really need that 30,000-foot view to understand it. Because for hundreds of years, the ultimate goal of a painter was just representation.
Right. You looked at the world and you tried to mirror it on the canvas as accurately as possible.
Exactly. And in that context, light was treated as mere illumination. Like it was just a tool you used to reveal a subject.
Just turning on a spotlight so you can see the tree or the house.
Right. But the Delaunays, they completely rejected that premise. For them, light wasn't just this passive spotlight. It was a dynamic, active force in its own right. And color was no longer just a superficial coat of paint applied to an object to make it recognizable.
Like painting an apple red just because apples are red.
Exactly. They began treating color as the actual structural foundation of space itself. Like in their work, color isn't the decoration, color is the architecture.
Okay, let's unpack this because that's a huge claim. We need to talk about the actual mechanics of how they built this visual engine.
Yeah, because you can't just throw red and blue on a canvas randomly and expect the painting to start vibrating.
Right, there has to be a system.
There is. There's this deeply scientific underpinning to it, and it's rooted in 19th century color theories, specifically the work of Michel Eugene Chevreul.
Oh, right, the chemist.
Yes. So Chevreul developed this principle called simultaneous contrast, and the core concept is that colors don't exist to a vacuum.
Okay.
When you place certain colors side by side, they physically alter our visual perception of one another. And the Delaunays just became completely obsessed with this.
I mean, it's a cool idea. So is this, like, think about when you wear a really neon green shirt and it just makes your blue eyes pop, but like cranked up to a scientific level.
That's a great analogy, actually. Yeah, it's exactly like that, but weaponized. They realized that if you place highly saturated complementary colors directly adjacent to each other,
Like red and green.
yeah, like a stark red next to a vivid green or a deep blue right next to a bright orange. When you do that, the human eye biologically struggles to resolve the boundary between them.
Kobe, wait, let's break down the biology of that struggle for a second. Why does the eye fail to process a clear line between those colors?
Well, it comes down to how the photoreceptors in our eyes process light waves.
Right.
When you stare at highly saturated opposing wavelengths of light at the same time, your photoreceptors essentially experience retinal fatigue.
Oh, wow. So they're getting tired.
Yeah, they're literally trying to process two clashing signals at the exact same time. And this biological strain, it creates the physical illusion of movement.
That is wild.
One color might appear, drastically brighter and seem to jump forward into your space, while the contrasting color seems to pull back or recede into the canvas.
You know what that reminds me of? Think of it like audio feedback or phasing frequencies in music.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Like if you take two audio tones that are just slightly out of tune and you play them together, they create this physical wobble. It's a phase clash that you can actually feel in your ears.
Yes.
It sounds like the Delaunays were basically creating the visual equivalent of an audio phase clash.
That audio phase cloud is actually the perfect way to understand it. They took a biological limitation and turned it into a motor.
Right.
Because previous generations, like the Impressionists, they wanted to capture a fleeting, delicate moment of light.
Like a nice sunset over a pond.
Exactly. But the Delaunays, they wanted to capture the absolute shattering of light. Simultaneous contrast became the engine of illusion and movement on this totally flat surface.
Okay, so you have this radical, highly scientific theory of retinal fatigue and vibrating colors.
Right.
But how do you take a lab experiment like visual phase clashing and actually apply it to a canvas?
Yeah.
I mean, you need a subject that already embodies that kind of modern fractured energy, right?
You do. And for Robert Delaunay, around 1909, he tests this theory on the ultimate symbol of modernity, the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, of course, the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. And you have to remember the Eiffel Tower was the towering legacy of the 1889 Universal Exhibition.
Right, it was relatively new back then.
Exactly. And it was this massive industrial skeleton made of iron. I mean, look at it in contrast to the heavy, solid, impenetrable stone architecture of historic Paris.
Yeah, all those old cathedrals and stone buildings.
Right. The Eiffel Tower was just a lattice of empty space and metal. It literally allowed the sky to pass right through its core.
Which is such a striking image.
Yeah.
So Robert looks at this iron grid, and he decides to absolutely shatter it on the canvas.
Completely shatter it.
Like when you look at his Eiffel Tower series, he abandons any safe central perspective.
Yeah, there's no single vantage point.
Right. The tower tilts dangerously, it gets cropped out of nowhere, it leans aggressively and bleeds right off the edge of the frame. Your eye is forced to constantly dart around the canvas.
From the base, jumping to the top, then down to the fragments of the city.
It's dizzying.
It really is. It's an assembly of viewpoints. He's recreating the experience of scanning a massive structure with your eyes, rather than just showing you a static snapshot of it.
Okay, wait, let me push back on the art history context here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If he's deliberately fracturing the image, right, and showing us the tower from multiple perspectives all at once, how is this not just analytic cubism?
That's a very common question.
Because Picasso and Braque were already breaking forms apart and painting subjects from multiple angles simultaneously. So what actually separates Robert Delaunay from the cubists?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the divergence from analytic cubism is actually the central point of friction.
Okay.
Traditional cubism fractured form, definitely, but to do so, those artists drastically limited their color palette.
Oh, right. It's always very brown.
Exactly. They used these muted grays, browns, and ochres. They deliberately stripped away vibrant color so the viewer would focus entirely on the geometric volume of the subject.
That makes sense.
But Delaunay completely refused to separate form from color. He took that structural fragmentation and he fused it with those intense, simultaneous color contrasts we were just talking about.
Oh, I see. So cubism is like dismantling an engine to show the viewer all the geometric parts, whereas Delaunay is trying to paint the intense heat radiating off the engine while it's actually running.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to conceptualize it, yes. Arolu's essay actually describes the Eiffel Tower in these paintings as a vector.
A vector, okay.
Right, it clashes violently with the city around it. And the sky isn't just a passive neutral blue background waiting patiently behind the metal.
Like it usually is in a landscape.
Right. Instead, the sky aggressively mixes with the iron framework. The colors of the atmosphere and the colors of the industrial structure collide and basically melt into each other.
Which, when you think about it, serves as a flawless metaphor for the modern urban experience.
Oh, totally.
Because walking through a noisy, industrialized city is not some calm, still life experience. It's a barrage of sensory input.
Yes.
It's dizzying. You're looking up at skyscrapers, down the street, things are moving past you in your periphery.
Hey.
The visual noise of the city is just overwhelming.
Exactly. He wasn't romanticizing the Eiffel Tower as some majestic symbol of French national pride. He was using it as a laboratory, basically, to recreate the disjointed, high-speed sensory overload of modern life.
The Eiffel Tower series was clearly a massive breakthrough.
Yeah.
But, Robert was still relying on a recognizable physical object.
He was, yeah.
The viewer can still look at the canvas and say, okay, that is a fractured tower.
Mm.
But the next logical leap is fascinating. Because how do you transition from looking at an object to painting the actual experience of looking itself?
And this transition happens around 1912 with his Window series, or Fenêtre.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because for centuries, going all the way back to the Renaissance, the fundamental definition of a painting was a window into the world.
Right, the Alberti window.
Exactly. The artist creates a perfect mathematical perspective, and the viewer looks through the frame at a cohesive scene. And Robert takes that foundational rule and just inverts it entirely.
He does. Instead of offering a clear view out into a landscape, the window becomes a framing device that shatters the view.
Wow.
You're presented with these simultaneous overlapping planes of city fragments. The boundary between the inside of the room and the outside world completely dissolves.
So if he's eliminating traditional perspective, the experience is less like looking out of a clear pane of glass and more like looking through a stained glass window.
Yes, exactly.
But like a stained glass window where the glass itself is glowing from within.
That's spot on. The essay actually specifically links his approach to vitré or stained glass logic.
Cool.
Yeah, because in traditional representation, an artist paints a light source, like the sun shining on the objects in the scene.
Right.
But in the Window series, the color relationships themselves actually produce the light.
That's incredible.
The canvas isn't a mirror reflecting a bright day anymore. The canvas behaves like a primary light source.
Because it's generating its own energy purely through the proximity of those clashing colors we talked about.
Exactly. And this rhythmic, energetic arrangement of colors, it's actually what led the poet Guillaume Apollinaire to coin the term Orphism to describe Delaunay's work.
Orphism. Named after Orpheus, the legendary musician from mythology who could charm anything with his lyre.
Right. So Apollinaire is making a direct connection between color and music.
That makes so much sense.
Apollinaire recognized that Delaunay was treating color the exact way a composer treats musical notes.
Like, a single note played in isolation doesn't convey a melody or an emotion.
Exactly. And a single color on its own does not vibrate. But when a composer groups notes into chords or sequences them in specific intervals, they create rhythm, harmony, and dissonance.
So Delaunay was basically creating visual chords.
Yes, visual chords. He was sequencing colors to create a tempo on the canvas.
Wow. But even with those musical chords of color, a fragmented window is still tied to the physical world, right?
It is, yeah.
Like, there are still faint silhouettes of buildings. If the goal is to achieve pure, unadulterated musical rhythm in paint, eventually you have to drop the objects entirely.
Which is the massive leap Robert takes next. He moves into his completely abstract discs and rhythm series.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a moment here.
Go for it.
Because walking through a gallery in, say, 1913 and encountering these must have been absolutely baffling.
Oh, people were very confused.
Right. We've gone from the Eiffel Tower to a shattered window to basically just colored circles. We're talking about flat circular forms, concentric rings, and intersecting geometric segments. If there is no object at all, no tower, no person, no landscape, how does this actually hold a viewer's attention? Without a subject, isn't it just a flat decorative pattern?
You'd think so, but it holds your attention because, biologically, your eye is actually incapable of resting when it looks at these canvases.
It's because of the retinal fatigue.
Exactly. The circles aren't just static geometry. They represent continuous energy, time, and dynamic rotation.
Wow.
Because of the simultaneous contrast, the warm, highly saturated colors physically push forward toward your retina, while the cool, low-intensity colors recede.
So it's a literal push and pull. The painting is acting on the viewer's body.
Yes. The painting doesn't represent movement by, like, showing you a picture of a wheel turning. The painting causes movement inside your eye.
That is mind-blowing.
It's an active perceptual event. And this direct manipulation of the retina directly predicted the op art and kinetic art movements.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Artists in the 1950s and 60s would build entire careers on the optical vibrations that Delaunay was engineering back in the 1910s. He proved that color didn't need a subject. The color itself was the subject.
Okay, so up to this point, Robert has masterfully hacked the human eye. He's weaponized the science of retinal fatigue to make static paint dance.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all of that optical magic is still trapped on a flat canvas, hanging on a quiet gallery wall. It's an intellectual exercise.
It is, yeah.
So how does this visual revolution break out of the museum and become a modern lifestyle?
Well, that transformation requires a completely different kind of genius, which brings us to the crucial contribution of Sonia Delaunay.
Yes. Sonia looks at this incredible optical engine they've developed, and she realizes there is absolutely no reason to confine it to a wooden frame.
No reason at all. Sonia brought the logic of textiles, patchwork, and craft into the realm of high abstraction. She took the principle of simultaneous contrast, those vibrating, pushing, pulling chords of color, and she applied them to the physical world. She put them on dresses.
I love that.
She designed book covers, stage sets, and massive interior spaces.
So what does this all mean? By taking that abstract rhythm and putting it on a dress, she literally took the art off the wall and made it walk down the street.
Yes.
She turned the viewer into an active participant. Instead of a static painting, it becomes a moving topographical map of color navigating a crowded Parisian cafe.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the radical nature of Sonia's move really cannot be overstated.
Because of the art world at the time.
Exactly. Back then, the art world enforced a very rigid, elitist hierarchy. Fine art, which meant paintings and sculptures created mostly by men, belonged in museums and was considered intellectually superior.
And everything else was just craft.
Right. You had applied art, textiles, fashion, crafts, which was dismissed as mere decoration and was largely associated with women.
And she just shatters that boundary entirely.
Completely smashes it. Robert expanded the theoretical and optical horizon of modern painting, but Sonia gave that theory social and material life.
Wow.
When a human body wears a Sonia Delaunay dress, the abstract rhythm is no longer just an illusion of movement on a flat surface.
Right, because the person is moving.
Exactly. The colors are moving through actual physical space and real time. The fabric folds, the body turns, the light hits the dye differently with every single step.
So the optical vibration is multiplied by the kinetic movement of the wearer.
Precisely.
They realized that they didn't just want to illustrate modern life from the sidelines. They wanted to design the fabric of it.
Literally.
Sonia's work proved that abstraction wasn't just some high-minded experiment for art critics. It was a tangible way of living. She created an entire lifestyle, which they call simultaneous.
They really needed each other's specific brilliance to complete the circuit. I mean, without Robert's deep dive into the theoretical physics of light, the color theory might not have reached that pure, uncompromising level of abstraction. But without Sonia's application, it would have stayed locked in a frame. She proved that visual rhythm could be a bodily, spatial experience that you could literally wrap around yourself.
Looking back at the whole journey we just took, the scale of their innovation is staggering.
It really is.
It begins with Michel-Eugène Chevreul's 19th century chemistry, discovering how our photoreceptors clash when viewing complementary colors. And then Robert takes that biological glitch and uses it to shatter the Eiffel Tower.
Turning an iron monument into a vibrating vector of urban noise.
Right. And from there, the window ceases to be a view of the outside world and becomes an Orphism stained glass generator of light.
And then the recognizable world is abandoned entirely for those abstract concentric discs that physically push and pull the retina.
And finally, Sonia weaves that exact same optical magic into the clothes on our backs, turning the street itself into a kinetic gallery. The Delaunays proved that light and color are not just passive tools we use to describe our surroundings.
They are the active engines of how we experience reality. And, you know, that legacy is woven into the visual fabric of our lives right now.
Oh, for sure.
The next time you see a piece of vibrant, high-contrast graphic design that immediately grabs your eye, or a bold piece of fashion that seems to vibrate as the person walks, or even an optical illusion that forces you to blink and recalibrate, you are experiencing the direct legacy of the Delaunays.
They set out to make color move, and they fundamentally succeeded.
They absolutely did.
Which leaves us with one final, slightly unsettling thought for you to chew on.
Oh, here we go.
The Delaunays spent their entire lives figuring out how to use color to deliberately hack human optical perception.
Yeah.
They figured out how to make us feel dynamic movement, energy, and tension using nothing but static pigments and dyed fabric.
Right.
Today, we spend the majority of our waking hours staring at perfectly curated, intensely color-engineered digital screens. If the Delaunays could completely alter our sense of space, time, and energy with paint on a canvas or dye on a dress, how is the highly funded, scientifically optimized color psychology of the apps and interfaces we use right now actively hacking our brains, directing our attention, and manipulating our emotions without us even realizing it?
That is a terrifyingly good question.
So the next time an app icon seems to pulse and pull you in, remember that flat canvas vibrating on the wall.